gone over we've gone over 5 of the 6 types already. So if you remember, we've gone. Oh, come here! You have to have my little D'Artagnan wants to say hello. So we've covered the selfless, the pleaser, the sinner, the codependent, and the drama junkie, or the adrenaline junkie. And today we have the victim, or the martyr. So I thought it was a perfect time to share this email that I got. Dear evening, I've lived out my life as a victim. If someone else has any authority over me or seems stronger or better than me in any way, I give myself over to them. I'm threatened by anyone who is strong-willed or who has any power. I can't speak up for myself no matter how much someone takes advantage of me. I allow everyone to abuse me in some way. My boss takes advantage of me, my friends use me, and my boyfriends usually end up walking all over me. I'm a real doormat. That sounds awful. Doesn't that just sound awful? Even in our culture, women in general do tend to get frequently victimized by inequality and prejudices and misogynism in our society, and it's worse in other parts around the world. And I know that a lot of women, including myself, have historically had a lot of problems with expressing anger. Anger is a really difficult emotion for a lot of us to access. And whereas boys are socialized to act out, girls tend to go inward with their anger. A lot of times girls can be raised almost to have it be feminine to be a victim. This is especially a problem in families where there is one sort of hypercritical parent and one real passive parent, and especially if you have a culture in your family or where boys are particularly revered or preferred, or one thing you don't hear much about is a misogynism among women. Where even a mother will prefer her male offspring to her daughter, and fathers and grandfathers and uncles can be very affectionate to little girls, and then as soon as puberty hits, it just stops. In my case, my father was never affectionate, and there is a real need for that, for there to be for a girl to receive non-sexual affection from her father and her mother, but there's something about the opposite gender parent providing that it has an impact on your future dating behavior. It's real easy for us to naturally fall into a victim mentality, which then morphs very easily into a martyr mentality, which a martyr is someone who gives up their own well-being, or their own safety, or their own comfort for someone else. And so this really is a beautiful, easy thing to fall into if you're already codependent, and then you have this enmeshed family, and you're surrounded by takers, and they're real happy to martyr you. So like I said, the most common cause of victim mentality is having one very domineering parent and one very passive parent, so that the child grows up feeling like there is always someone who has to dominate, and someone who has to get taken advantage of, and that just allowing yourself to go ahead and just take that victim role keeps the peace. It keeps the peace. It even protects your kids, or protects your mother, or something in your mind, or your younger siblings in your mind. So these things we do them before we know what we're doing, of course, as children, and then they get fixed in our minds as patterns and behaviors before we have had a chance to really analyze and think about what they really mean. So this person, this Sonia that had written into me, she had always had this fantasy that someone stronger, and richer and more courageous and all that would come and take care of her. And the price that she paid for that is that she was continually getting involved with people that wanted to control her and didn't actually end up taking good care of her at all. They took advantage of her. And it constantly left her in this position of not taking proper care of herself because she was waiting for someone else to do it. And if she took care of herself, it was as though she was admitting no one loved her. So her getting someone else to take care of her was a way of validating that she was lovable. So it was just a real twisted. And once we kind of were able to get down into it and figure that out, and she saw it, it was a real kind of awakening for her to see that. And so she's been working at changing it and feeling more empowered about taking care of herself. And funny thing about that too is that once you do that, that's when someone will show up. And we're going to talk more about that. That's a whole separate episode, but that I've been planning. But it's a real thing, a phenomenon. Anyway, so if any of these suit you, then you might fall into this victim or martyr category. So if you feel like you're walking on eggshells all the time to keep people from getting angry, if you're fearful of confrontations, do you find yourself over apologizing? Like you're just apologizing constantly, you don't even actually know why. Like, I'm sorry is just sort of how you start almost everything you say. Do you feel overpowered by your husband, your boyfriend, your parents, or your boss? Or even your friends, or a sibling, anybody? Do you feel that you just can't do anything right? Do you often feel like running away or not dealing with things at all? Do you often feel as though you are not running your own life? Do you have a hard time saying no? Do you ever feel that you have few options for improving your life? Your choices are limited? Do you feel unappreciated? Like people don't appreciate you? Do you tend to assume the worst? Assume the worst, like people think the worst of you, or you assume the worst about someone's intentions, or you assume the worst is going to happen, like that. When you are presented with a problem, do you usually become overwhelmed with doubts and fears and assume that you will not be able to cope with the situation? Do you tend to feel helpless, immobilized in a crisis? So ask yourself those questions. And if you think that sounds like you really need to do some work, because that is a very frantic, panicky way to feel. That feels like being vulnerable, almost like being a child casted into the world. And especially if you are with an emotional abuser, this is going to be a constant source of anxiety for you, because there isn't security there, and they're constantly creating crises. And so if you have a hard time, if you catastrophize in a crisis, then you're constantly in catastrophe. So the 6 primary manifestations of an emotionally abused woman, and how you can tell if you have the symptoms of being emotionally abused, and if you need to do some healing work. So again, just one more time, that's the selfless person, the selfless woman, the pleaser, the sinner, the codependent, the drama junkie, and the victim. Okay, come back, and we're going to do another series. I don't know if I'll do it right away, but in a little bit we're going to do this series on 6 manifestations of a abuser and what that looks like. All right, thank you for listening, and please write any comments below and come back.